We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxingego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live.
More bad news for Canelo Alvarez, Golden Boy, and Dazn. Canelo Paycut is confirmed, and you won't believe who they said he may face. But wait, there's more. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, the Cash App, and the Patreon family. We working. Shout out to everybody that ordered UFC 251 using my link. Appreciate you. I tracked the stats. We did great. I had fun with the card. Main event, you know, I kind of expected more, but overall it's a good card. You can still get ESPN Plus for your entertainment needs. They got a lot of documentaries. They got archives of UFC and boxing fights, a lot of specials and exclusives that you can get on ESPN Plus. You can get it as a standalone app or ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus. Get all three of those apps, one price, $12.99 a month. Use my link below if you're interested in signing up, and it does help my channel. Now, the Dazn curse continues. ESPN Plus, link in the description. They are reporting. Let me pause this. Promoter: if Canelo fights in September, quote, he's going to make less. Now, I did a video about this. It was titled something like Canelo to make significantly less in next fight, which is problematic. When Canelo signed this deal with Dazn, obviously we didn't know of a pandemic, but it doesn't matter, because when he signed the deal, they said it was the most lucrative sports contract in history. Another thing they attached to Canelo's 10-11 fight deal for 365 mil bars is they said he was getting guaranteed money. And I told you I had several questions about this, like how he's getting so much money no matter who he's fighting, what type of opponents will they put him in. Now just look. Says when boxing superstar Canelo Alvarez returns to the ring this year, he could be making less money. So right there, the opening statement is a direct contradiction to the actual title of the video. It says if if he fights in September, he's going to make less. So ESPN wrote an article where the headline says, quote, he's going to make less. But then the opening stanza is trying to sound optimistic, and it says when boxing superstar returns to the ring, he could be making less. Which is, you know, that's not good writing. That's not good writing if your title is like, you know, Quaker Oatmeal is going out of business, and then the first sentence of this writing, how the title says Quaker Oatmeal, you know, company is going out of business, and you said Quaker Oatmeal could go out of business as the first sentence. So that makes no sense. But I digress. Let's keep going. Alvarez, middleweight champion, super middleweight titleist, has said he wants to return Mexican Independence Day weekend, you know, the quote-unquote Mexican dates here in America in September, but he doesn't have an opponent yet, and venues are still trying to reopen following states' restrictions due to the Rona. Boxing is now back up and running, but is doing so without live audiences. This means no door money. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. So, president of Golden Boy, quote, Canelo, he hasn't agreed to anything. But obviously, because there's not going to be a gate, automatically he's going to make less. He gets part of the gate. The sponsors are not around also. A lot of the sponsors don't want to do anything right now. So I thought Dazn was paying him $365 million in 10 fight increments. So that was like, they're saying he was getting $36.5 million a pop. Now they're saying part of his money is from the gate, and now that there's no live audiences, he's going to suffer and take a pay cut. and now there's no sponsors. I'm sure people have businesses, whether they've had to use this pandemic and learn from it. You still have businesses, so why wouldn't you have sponsors and sponsorships? Like, let's say we just have to go about how we do our business different. Like, let's say Starbucks, instead of having a dining area where people can work and get on their laptops and be in the actual lobby cafe, maybe it's carry out only and pick up only and drive through only. You see what I'm saying? So why can't he have sponsors? Really weird. Gomez says, he goes on to say, so if he fights because there's no gate, Canelo is going to make less, which is what I told you in a previous video. It's the second time he said this. He said it to Sky Sport, and he's now saying it to ESPN, two, accredited news sites or whatever you want to call them. That's if he fights. Now it's a if he fights. So for several weeks, maybe months, they've been saying Canelo was trying to reschedule a Billy Joe Saunders fight. Then they threw around names like Anthony Durrell, John Ryder, Caleb Smith, Ryota Murata, right? Saying he could fight to go in these different ways and all that. Now they're saying if he decides to fight, but he hasn't decided yet. For many fighters, ticket sales and gate receipts are irrelevant because they aren't box office attractions. But for Canelo Alvarez, it's a key part of his revenue stream. His first bout with Gennady Golovkin in Vegas generated over $27 million at the gate. The rematch a year later did $24 million at the gate. These two fights are number 3 and 4 respectively in all-time receipts for Nevada. His fight last year with Jacobs procured $8.6 million in ticket revenue. Without the ability to sell tickets, there will be less money in the pot. What's not clear is Dazn, Alvarez's broadcast partner, will ask Canelo for a reduced price for his next fight. In 2018, Canelo signed an exclusive 5-year deal, reportedly for 11 fights, $365 million, which we know about. Canelo is one of the key assets to Dazn, which generates revenue off of a subscription base. Quote, they obviously would love him to fight. Everything's been positive, Gomez said of discussions with Dazn. Automatically, with no gate, he would take less. Again, he says it again. So if Canelo fights, who will his opponent be? In a recent interview with Sky Sports, Gomez said Caleb Smith or super middleweight contender John Ryder under consideration. We are not closing the door on anybody, Gomez said. Canelo's available to fight the best. He always wants to fight the best. The problem right now is fighters have to be reasonable. Everyone has to be reasonable. So the first guy to step up and is reasonable and understands we're in a pandemic, that's probably the guy who's going to get the fight. Because it's not like where we were a year ago when everything was normal and fine and everything was business as usual. It's not business as usual right now. We're in a pandemic. Excuses. Now, but wait, there's more. Smash the like button. Golden Boy president Gomez also said that middleweights Jason Quigley from down under, and Tureano Johnson would be in consideration. They are both promoted by Golden Boy. We're not going to close the door. You should close the door right now. You should close it. Like, I understand they said they're not going to close the door, but you should. Like, just close the door and lock it. Like, just pretend there's like a bear or like Jason Voorhees. Choo, choo, choo. Cute, cute. Like, just close the door. Like, Jason Voorhees is out there. Like, we're not going to close the door. We're not going to handicap ourselves, especially right now during the pandemic. This is like the 3rd, 4th time that he's mentioned the pandemic. I think everybody globally around the world is aware we are in a pandemic. You're not going to get sympathy from people. People who don't make millions have lost their jobs, been furloughed. Their kids are at home with, so they're having the burden of kids and, projects that they're working on around the house, not being able to complete them because now they have no built-in daycare with the school system, things like that. Gomez continued, you need all the help you could get Adding the choosing the vote for Canelo is every much budgetary issue as it's making the most appealing fight. So do the potential opponents understand the current economics involved? Some do, and then there's fighters who need to wake up and don't understand it's a different world we're living in right now. As for when the deal will be made, there really isn't a sense of urgency given the current climate. It's a little different right now because you want to get out ahead when you're selling tickets. When there's not going to be any tickets to sell, it's not going to be a gate, so that helps. We can announce the next fight even a month out. That's a horrible outlook for a Canelo fight, but just a fight in general that's supposed to be big, but especially for Canelo, and I'll explain why in a second. It's a shame. It's the same with pay-per-view. You're doing a pay-per-view, you want to start early. The earlier, the better to market and promote the event. So this is a little different, but we'll see. We have a few plans in place for him, and we're discussing everything. There's a chance that Alvarez's next bout could be in a smaller, more intimate setting. We've also had those talks on the table. You don't have the urgency to be in a special venue. It could be in a ballroom. It could be in a studio. It could be anywhere, which is a little bit of a luxury for us. With Canelo Alvarez already having missed one date this year in May, there's also the possibility of having him have a quick turnaround in boxing again in December. We talked about it, the different scenarios, but everything right now is just ideas, and we're talking. At the end of the day, he'll decide what he wants. Wow. Now, I have so much to say, as you might very well imagine, and it is not sounding or looking good for Mr. I was born ready Alvarez. They are so misguided. Canelo, first of all, Canelo's golfing right now. I don't think he's even worried about it. He's golfing. He's like Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer. He's like golfing right now. So he's getting paid. Canelo is robbing the bank with no ski mask. That's for starters. But for Golden Boy and Dazn, this is looking horrible. One, they're saying Canelo may not fight. So let me get this straight. The biggest name on Dazn, Canelo Alvarez, angry at Golden Boy, and he may not fight this year. I'm just going over the various plausible scenarios as stated by Golden Boy. That'll be bad, because how do you sell these subscriptions to Dazn, which are higher than the market price of Netflix or HBO, Showtime, PBC, whoever, ESPN Plus, Spotify? That's bad. So that's that. I mean, that goes without saying. You need your star power. Then the other guys like Joshua, he might fight Pulev, which still hasn't been announced. And Triple G might fight someone that no one's ever heard of, Camille Sesmeta. So I don't see how you really justify the price point with fights like this. Now, let's say Canelo does fight. All the names, the fact that Canelo Alvarez, old media said he's the face of boxing. I told you he wasn't. If he fights Jason Quigley or Tureano Johnson under any circumstance, he can't be the face of boxing, bro. No disrespect to them guys as fighters, but that is horrendous. The fact that they're even being considered lets you know there's problems. The other thing is Golden Boy is saying fighters have to be reasonable. Why? I don't think people care that you're in a pandemic. You get what I'm saying? And we've known fighters to get these wealthy, crazy paychecks to fight Canelo or to fight on Dazn in general for so long. So now that they're in the running or in consideration, how is it that Canelo could get 36.5 million or some version of a pay cut to that, which it looks like he's going to have to take a pay cut, but I thought he had guaranteed money, which is in itself its own issue. But now that you're up, you want Billy Joe Saunders or Jason Quigley or Tureano Johnson to get this opportunity of a lifetime with Canelo, whose star power has consistently been dwindling down since he's been on the Dazn app. And now they're supposed to like budge and, take peanuts. And then if they lose, which there's a high likelihood based on how good of a fighter Canelo is, and the fact that Canelo is very hard to beat on judges' scorecards if the fight is close. So if you cannot absolutely knock Canelo out, then there's a huge chance that you're going to lose on the cards, because we've seen it. We've seen all the judges' decisions and crazy wide scorecards for Canelo. Like for Amir Khan. Amir Khan got knocked out with one punch, so ultimately it didn't matter. But it's the principle. Like Big Worm said, it's principalities. 2 of the 3 judges at the time of the stoppage had Amir Khan losing, which is impossible if you watch that fight, because Amir Khan was actually doing good until he got caught. He was winning the first 4 rounds pretty handily. Canelo had to adjust that speed. Amir Khan went, eesh, and then he, eesh. Then he was knocked out. But before that, he wasn't doing bad. So how, like, just for the, even though it wouldn't have mattered on the scorecards, that just shows you how fighters are up against it when they fight Canelo. Like, they have the scorecard so wide for Canelo in the Lotta fight, Levi Martinez. Adelaide Bird had a ridiculous scorecard in the first Golovkin fight that Golovkin should have won. You know, one judge in the Mayweather fight allegedly seen that Canelo had a draw and drew with Floyd. So it's just, you're up against it. So these fighters, they shouldn't back down. They should get as much money as you can, because when and if you lose to Canelo, then you're going to have to rebuild your career, and good luck getting the paydays that you demand. You know, you're going to have a good showing where everyone feels you were robbed or something like that, or you're going to have to beat Canelo. So I don't agree with that. But the other thing that Eric Gomez, Golden Boy president, said that I don't like, that I don't agree with, is he's saying that we have the luxury of, you know, there's no gate anyway, so we can announce kind of when we want. That's not how that works, because despite not having ticket sales, it's not just about ticket sales. You still should, I'm not going to say you have to, because you don't have to do anything technically, but you still should promote a fight. We are right now, if you look at a calendar, today is July 12th, right? This weekend is a fresh week, Sunday. This weekend is the 18th. You guys see that? The 18th, then there's the 25th. So if you look at a calendar, you have the whole month of August, and then you have September. So there are literally about 7-8 weeks before Canelo is alleged to fight, if he takes the Mexican dates. So if he does fight in September, he has 8 weeks roughly. 8 weeks with no announcement to opponent. And the reason why this has been such a horrendous move for Canelo ever since he's been on Dazn is you can't even blame the pandemic. As much as Eric Gomez and this ESPN article try to cite the pandemic for all these things, much of their problems, much ado about what's causing these problems, have been things that have continuously been going on with Canelo's career. So you can't even blame the pandemic. For example, Canelo was trying to negotiate with Kovalev. He spent so much time negotiating. I'm talking about the first negotiation. So much time. Then Kovalev said, hey, I got to fight Anthony Yard. You don't want to give me what I want? I'm out. I'm fighting Yard. And then Canelo was left with that long, disastrous first Kovalev negotiations that went nowhere. And then he tried to negotiate for a small period of time with the deadline, because he had to fight his mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko. Couldn't agree to terms by the deadline set forth by the IBF, who he should have been trying to fight in the beginning. Instead of Kovalev at 175 that no one asked for, he should have stuck to where he was at and spent that whole time trying to negotiate Derevyanchenko. But then that didn't work out with Derevyanchenko, right? Another person that they said he's rumored to fight. And then by the time all of those failed negotiations failed, Canelo was left without a dance partner, and he could not fight by September. So Canelo, normally you're supposed to take the dates you want or get past the torch by defeating a person. Mayweather, we knew, fought in May and September historically since he's been Money Mayweather. And he took that. He took that from De La Hoya. You know, he took the Mexican dates. Canelo had the opportunity and he got embarrassed by Mayweather. So he never even took the date. But then Canelo, based on his descent and ethnicity, says, hey, I deserve the Mexican dates. So we allowed Canelo, because he was the big guy. You know, he was the popular star. We all follow his career. So we just said, all right, even though you couldn't take the dates from Mayweather, we'll just let you have the dates, and then people got out the way and said, those are the dates that Canelo wants to fight. But in the last couple years, after begging for these dates, he's not even fighting on the dates. Like, you did all this and put up all this fuss because it meant so much to you to have the Mexican dates. But then 1 May, Cinco de Mayo, you failed a drug test with clenbuterol. So that canceled the May fight with Golovkin, the rematch. And you couldn't fight him until September. Then last year, as I just mentioned, you had failed negotiations with Kovalev and Deryevchenko. So by the time all of that ended and it went nowhere with either fighter, you weren't ready for September. So you had to later, after Kovalev almost got stopped by Anthony Yard, had to later fight Kovalev at 175 and come back to the table in November. Now we're 8 weeks out until Canelo's supposed to fight in September. So as I mentioned, this is not something that's new. Before the pandemic started, which in America, the significant date was when the NBA shut down. So that was March of 2020 that we really knew the danger of this pandemic and that live sports was going to be canceled. Before March 2020, and I know because it's my birthday month, shout out to the Pisces and the Aries. Before that date, that month, every live sport was not canceled or anything. So this has been a routine from Canelo, Golden Boy, and Dazn of getting Canelo very little wiggle room before his actual date. I just gave you an example. So you can't say, oh, it's based on the pandemic. That's why, it doesn't matter if we promote that hard or not, because you haven't been promoting that hard before the pandemic even occurred. So that's cap. That's cap. You've been giving very little time between the announcement of Canelo's fight and the actual fight date. You haven't been promoting no matter what. Like, Canelo Jacobs was not heavily promoted in a good way. Kovalev fight was horrifically promoted with DJ Khaled. This is looking a mess, bro. That's crazy. It's like, how does Golden Boy take Canelo to Dazn, and then Dazn curse kicks off so much that now Canelo's angry with Golden Boy. He's golfing. They're struggling to get his opponent. It's not a good sign when you're supposed to be the face of boxing and all your opponent option, when you have like 8 to 12 different names being thrown out for you each time, and none of them are like the names that we want to hear, like Better Biev, like Caleb Plant, like David Benavidez, like Jamal Charlo, like Demetrius Andrade. None of those names are linked up. And the funny thing is, Canelo, Golden Boy, they made it sound like Charlo and Caleb Plant had an opportunity to fight Canelo, but then now they turned it down, which we know is cap, but that's what Golden Boy is trying to make it out. Why is Canelo not fighting Caleb Plant now that he's free, now that he's in a pandemic? Caleb Plant, I could go to his page. He's still training. I just been watching it. Caleb Plant is training right now. You know what I mean? So look, he's in his garage in the pandemic training. He's in shape right now. That's his strength and conditioning coach. Right? But days before Caleb Plant was fighting his last opponent, I think his name was Vincent Fainbutts, right? Right before that, Golden Boy clout chased and made it look like they were trying to put together a Caleb Plant Canelo fight, and made it look like they tried to make it look like, which we knew was cap, like Caleb Plant didn't want to fight Canelo. But now they're talking about Canelo could fight Tureano Johnson and Jason Quigley, Ryota Murata. They alleged that he could fight Sergey Derevchenko, but now reports came out after that Derevchenko could fight Jamal Charlo. I mean, it's just looking horrendous for Golden Boy. If Canelo fights Jason Quigley or Tureano Johnson, I mean, these are just irrelevant fights. And ultimately, you're charging $20. Golden Boy could try their best to gain sympathy through the pandemic. You guys make millions of dollars. Get it together. Don't care. Everybody's in a pandemic. You have that's like Amazon Prime. I got a year subscription I paid in advance for Amazon Prime, right? When the pandemic first started, it was a bit rough. Things that I used to get in a day or two was taking like a week and a half, certain things. You know, they had to prioritize. But now they're back on track. Now they're back on schedule. The amount of money that Dazn has invested in Canelo and the amount of money that they're charging their consumers, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Get his fights together. If you have anybody's fights that are well put together on the whole Dazn app, it needs to be Canelo Alvarez, right? Nobody cares about this pandemic, you know, and it's just looking bad for Dazn people. You have Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, a fresh match that people were looking forward to. Eddie Hearn couldn't get it done. Now he's putting Katie Taylor in a dangerous rematch in his backyard that the girl got robbed the first time, right? You have just like Francis Ngannou and Dillian White. Eddie Hearn said there was a press conference, made it look like it was a fight. Nothing done. Yeah, Canelo, Billy Joe Saunders, that fight just perished. You have Ryan Garcia, and he was supposed to fight 4th of July, which has already happened. We don't even know who he's fighting. He's telling Golden Boy to release him. It's looking bad, bro. New media. And like I said, you don't have the luxury of wait in this waiting game. They are totally mismanaging Ryan and Canelo with this stuff. You're waiting 8 weeks, crowd or not, 8 weeks to promote this fight. And where boxing is getting it wrong, in my view, is the fights that nobody really wants to see. You should actually spend more money in the promotional department, because we already don't want to see Canelo versus Jason Quigley or Canelo versus Tureano Johnson. So you're going to have to make that a thing and try your best to inform people who that person even is. I know who they are because I watch boxing or report boxing, but the masses and a lot of boxing fans wouldn't be familiar with those brands. So instead of just trying to cut all corners, the fights that really need to be promoted are the fights that aren't good. Like, you don't have to, it's good to have great promotion no matter how big the fight is, but a fight with Canelo Alvarez versus Miguel Cotto, Canelo versus Triple G, the fans, we already see the value in that, but we don't see the value in a lot of these other matchups that Canelo is being linked to. This looks horrible. Let me know what you guys think. Dazn curse strikes again. Ego Stradamus strikes again. Use my ESPN Plus link. Also sign up for the YouTube channel membership by hitting the join button, or the Patreon family. We cooking up, having a good time, discussing these boxing things. It's just, these are bad signs. And then now they're saying Canelo might not fight. He's going to have to take a pay cut. Pay cut? I thought he was getting guaranteed money. Now they're trying to use Golden Boy's trying to gain sympathy because of the pandemic. Everyone's in a pandemic. I don't care. I'm in the pandemic. You're in the pandemic. We're in the pandemic. We're all in this together. Doesn't mean you could charge $20 a month for some fights that people don't want to see. You got to still make what you can make, you know, and make the best match. And listen, I'm gonna just tell you like this. If PBC come out with a fire schedule like Leo Santa Cruz and Tank and Errol Spence, Danny Garcia, then DAZN's going to be even worse trouble, because it's like, how are they able to get it done? This is also goes back to my original point. DAZN, I told you it was a failed business model and business venture to ostracize and alienate yourself from the pay-per-view business model. Because then if you had you're talking about money and Canelo's going to have to take a pay cut. We don't have sponsors and this woe is me stuff. But if you had pay-per-view, then you could probably put together the Billy Joe Saunders fight and say, hey, this is on pay-per-view. But since the brainiacs at DAZN said, hey, bye-bye pay-per-view is dead, now you're going to look hypocritical if you try to do pay-per-view. So you're struggling trying to get these Dollar Tree opponents for Canelo Alvarez because money is now an issue. This wasn't well thought out. Again, Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo, that is not the best fight ever in the world, but it's better than some of the other names Canelo's linked to. So that would be better than some of the fights that Canelo has already had on pay-per-view. Like when he was on HBO, he had the Amir Khan fight and Liam Smith fight on pay-per-views. Certainly Billy Joe Saunders is more known about than that, but you can't pay him and you're asking him to do a pay cut because you refused and said pay-per-view is dead and all this stuff. Horrible. Horrible.
So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxingego, the future of boxing.